So what's good, TMG fam? It's your boy Ellen. I'm back with another reaction. How y'all feel? Welcome back to the channel. Salute. Now listen, I was trying to explain, or better yet, tell the story that I think I got from one of the videos we checked out, man. That was similar to this one. The title of this video is People Who Disappeared and Reappeared in Strange and Mysterious Ways, right? So what I automatically think about is that story of the family who lost their child. Child went missing, right? And when the child went missing for some years, the police did, search, and they were still continuing the ongoing investigation of the search. And they thought they had discovered the child that was missing. Turns out that wasn't their child when they brought him back. The family, if you guys don't remember this story, the child was brought back by the police saying this is him. They did an interview with the family, confirmed. The family said, yeah, we think that's him. That's him. It had been a long time, so the person had gotten a little bit older. So they figured this is, that's yeah. And they asked them all kind of questions and different things like that. Come to find out, it wasn't their child. It was somebody impersonating their child. You know what I'm saying? So when I see people who disappeared and reappeared in strange ways and mysterious ways, I automatically think about that story, bro. Because to me, man, that's one of the scariest things, you know what I mean, that can happen to a family. Because you're in so much pain over your family member going missing, and then when you get a little light of hope, you latch on to it. So it's like, oh, that's we found him. Bring him home. You know what I mean? And we'll pick up like we never left. The flip side of that, the scary part about that is thinking about how many nights this person has been in your home. You were asleep. What was this person doing while you were asleep? Have they been plotting on you? All the scary things that have been taking place, you know what I mean? It just freaks you out. So, but that's what I was thinking about when I seen this video. So we definitely got to check it out. So if you're new to the channel, man, hit the subscribe button, join the fam, and moment of silence for the haters. That's enough. Now run the likes up. Make sure y'all hit that like button. Let's check this out.
Tragic disappearances haunt the news headlines every day.
Yes.
But the strangest cases follow people who somehow reappear against all odds. From stone cold trails to forgotten identities, here's some of the most unbelievable cases of people who disappeared and reappeared in strange and mysterious ways. Stephen Kubecki. On a chilly day near the shore of Lake Michigan in February 1970.
The first thing I asked that dude is, what is your name? We got to start there, because there ain't too many people that I know with that type of last name, fam. You know what I mean? No disrespect or nothing like that. I'm just saying, I'd be like, yo, what's your name? Spell it, okay? You can do that? All right, we already starting off to a good start.
Kubecki. On a chilly day near the shore of Lake Michigan in February 1978, student Stephen Kubecki set out on a solo cross-country skiing trip. An avid outdoorsman, Kubecki had been cross-country skiing around Lake Michigan many times before. The trip wasn't unusual, but the rest of the story is. On February 21st, snowmobilers found a set of abandoned cross-country skis and a backpack next to a 200-yard trail of footprints which led to the edge of the frozen lake. But there was no returning trail. Afraid that Stephen had somehow fallen through the thick ice, a desperate air and land investigation was launched, but not a single trace of him was found. Then, 15 months later, Stephen Kubecki woke up. He was lying in a field in clothes he didn't recognize.
Whoa, how many?
Was launched, but not a single trace of him was found. Then, 15 months later.
15 months later? How is that even possible? Let me try to get it out again. 15 months later. And how? You haven't eaten? Doctors are not feeding you through a tube?
Stephen Kubecki woke up. He was lying in a field in clothes he didn't recognize and a bag full of maps and signs he didn't remember. He slowly made his way to his father's house, where he was amazingly reunited with his family, seemingly unharmed. He had woken up in Pittsfield, over 1,000 kilometers away from where he had originally disappeared. But Kubecki hadn't been flagged traveling on any public transport. How had he managed to end up so far away without any of his original belongings? Kubecki claims to have absolutely no memory of those missing 15 months and retreated from public life entirely, refusing to speak of the incident. Despite the questions it could answer, it seems to be a time he'd rather forget. Tanya Cut.
Again, how? You just can't remove 15 months out of your life, bro, and be like, nah, I woke up here. No, you did. You might have woke up there, but it's something you was doing 15 months, fam. I don't know. I would be thrilled to see him back if he was my family member, but I ain't gonna tell you that I ain't gonna side eye you the entire time you were around, cause something ain't right.
Sir, it seems to be a time he'd rather forget. Tanya Koch. March 21st, 2006. It was a typical day for grocery store owner Joe Spirico in the city of McKeesport, Pennsylvania. A regular customer, Nikki Allen, and a man who he assumed was her father walked into the store. The woman was shaking, and out of earshot of the man quickly confided a heart-stopping fact to Mr. Spirico in just 3 words. I'm Tanya Koch. The disappearance of Tanya Koch had haunted the town of McKeesport for more than 10 years. In 1996, at the age of 14, the young girl had vanished into thin air after leaving her father's house for school. An extensive investigation found no sign of her anywhere, and almost all hope had been lost for her safe return. Eventually, Tanya revealed that she had been groomed by her then school security guard, 48-year-old Thomas Hose, the same man who had accompanied her into the grocery store. She had been held captive by the monster in his home, which had only been 2 miles away from her father's house the whole time. For the first 4 years, she wasn't allowed to leave her prison-like room, and Hose even forced her to use a small bucket as a toilet. When she was eventually allowed outside, he changed her hair and name, threatening her if she spoke to anyone about who she really was. But the strangest part was that this man lived with his elderly parents and adult son, who all knew about her captivity but said nothing to the local authorities. She became brainwashed by being fed a series of lies and threats, but by dangerously revealing her true identity, she was able to escape. Hose was arrested, charged, and eventually imprisoned, while Tanya was reunited with her family just a few blocks away.
Still not he a few blocks away. My child is being held captive, and all you just want to hand him is some jail sentence? Nah. That ain't enough. That ain't enough. I mean, look at how many years have been taken away from this girl. And again, how the distance away. No. Not enough.
Gabriel Nagy. Sydney, Australia, 1987. After a busy afternoon of running errands, Gabriel Nagy called his wife Pamela and said he'd be coming home for lunch. Pamela lay out a tasty spread, but Gabriel never ate it. In fact, he never returned home. After several worrying hours, Pamela rang the police. Worry turned to sheer panic when Gabriel's car was discovered burned out on the side of the road, but her husband was nowhere to be found. Heartbroken, Pamela and the couple's 2 children began a search alongside the police for Gabriel. Shock really settled in.
Now, he could definitely have a head injury. You seen the way that car was sitting up? He could definitely have a head injury, be disoriented, not know where he is or who his family is. Yeah, this is a legit concern right here.
The road, but her husband was nowhere to be found. Heartbroken, Pamela and the couple's 2 children began a search alongside the police for Gabriel. Shock really settled in when after 2 weeks, the police determined Gabriel had withdrawn money from a bank in a city over 100 miles away. The search then went cold for the next 2 decades. Before declaring Gabriel dead 20 years on, Senior Constable Georgia Robinson gave the case one final push and came across a piece of information that stopped her in her tracks. A man by the name of Ron Saunders had recently received surgery in the city of McKay, 1,600 kilometers away, but records showed he also went by a familiar name, Gabriel Nagy. Investigating further, Robinson rang the man asking if he knew anything about the disappearance. The answer staggered her. Saunders claimed the last 2 decades of his life had been fuzzy. He'd mainly been homeless, wandering the streets and surviving by doing odd jobs. but had no recollection of his life before. He appeared to have suffered from a major head trauma from the
See what I was saying? That's the exact that. Who you hear stories like that, but man, this dude is literally walking around town homeless. That's why I tell my sons all the time, because kids will go to school and they'll learn from other kids that, homeless people, pick on home. And I tell them all the time, no, you don't do that. You don't pick on homeless people. Misfortune comes in many different shapes and sizes, man. It ain't like they chose to be that. Certain things have happened in their life that it's not always drug related. You know what I'm saying? People think they see a homeless person, this person's strung out on drugs. No, that's not the case. A person can have no family. A person could be down and just had a string of bad luck. It doesn't necessarily have to be drugs. So telling them that, and I was like, man, stuff like this can happen. This is crazy.
Accident that had burned out his car. The 2-decade ordeal was down to a case of severe amnesia, but something didn't add up here. He clearly remembered his own name. Why wouldn't he look for his family, or register himself as a missing person with police? Either way, the family are reunited, although the mystery pushes on. Ettore Majorana. If you knew you could be roped into working for a terrible cause, would you try and disappear? In May 1938, the brilliant and acclaimed scientist Ettore Majorana vanished under incredibly mysterious circumstances. He boarded a boat for Naples heading for Palmero, but once the boat docked, Majorana was nowhere to be found. The crew searched the vessel high and low, but despite records of him getting on, it seems he never got off. Strangely, the boat ride was calm, so he wasn't thrown overboard. He was also a strong Catholic, so taking his own life by jumping into the sea wouldn't have been an option. It took until 2011 to get any kind of answers when a photograph taken in Argentina around 1955 surfaced showing a man with 10 points of facial similarity to Majorana. But here's a rare twist. He hadn't aged. So how did he manage to end up safe in Argentina? And why? Where some more creative theorists suspect time travel is at play, many believe that at the time of his disappearance, Majorana's work with neutrino masses was pulling him towards nuclear work, like the Manhattan Project. It's possible that foreseeing the amount of death his work could bring, Majorana instead chose a life of solitude where he would not be part of such terrible developments. That's really putting your morals before your mystery. Jody Roberts. On May 25, 1985, a police officer in Aurora, Colorado was called to a local mall where a potential mental patient was in custody. She couldn't remember who she was, and all she had on her at the time was an empty notepad and a Toyota car key. She was taken to a hospital where she spent 4 months contacting local press outlets to see if anyone could help her uncover her past. But all roads led to dead ends. She eventually settled on a new name, Jane D., and began to rebuild her life in Alaska. She married and had 2 sets of twins before the incredible truth came to light 12 years later. A co-worker of Dee saw a news broadcast from Seattle about the renewed search for a missing woman who had disappeared into thin air back in 1985. This woman was none other than Jody Roberts, a hard-nosed investigative journalist who had gone missing from Washington. Her family were in a state of shock and incredibly relieved they'd found her along with her new family. But there's more to this story than meets the eye. Neurology experts have cast doubt on the idea Roberts suffered so suddenly from long-term amnesia, which at this level of severity would be an indicator of an epileptic seizure. Roberts didn't suffer from epilepsy. In addition, her colleagues from Washington noted she had emptied her bank account and took several of her cats to the Humane Society before disappearing, almost as if she'd been planning on starting a brand new life. She never revealed anything more about her amnesia episode to the press. Looks like the cat got her tongue. Agatha Christie. On the brisk evening of December 3rd, 1926, the famous mother of mystery writing, Agatha Christie, walked into her daughter's bedroom, kissed her child goodnight, and was suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. After days of searching, the only clue left was her abandoned car in Guilford, England, containing her fur coat and driver's license. Her disappearance looked like it was plucked straight out of one of her novels, but the reality was much scarier. Could a crazed fan of her work have kidnapped her? Or had she orchestrated the whole thing herself for publicity? 11 days passed and the public were whipped into a frenzy when a musician at Harrogate's Old Swan Hotel rang the police and claimed he had spotted Miss Christie dancing in the hotel ballroom. After being reunited with her family, she claimed to have entered a fugue state, a kind of dissociative amnesia, and couldn't remember a thing about the incident. Police failed to nail down anything concrete about her disappearance, but one thing that did stick out was the name she had booked into the hotel with: Teresa Neal. Treacherously, her husband at the time had been having an affair with a much younger lady called Nancy Neal. Coincidence? I think not. It's possible the troubling information sent Agatha into a state of shock, or maybe she did it to get back at her cheating husband. But she never revealed exactly what happened during that time. A good mystery writer never gives the game away. Brenda Heist. It was a normal day in Latisse, Pennsylvania, 2002. Devoted mother of two, Brenda Heist dropped her kids off at school, left dinner defrosting in the kitchen, and was halfway through doing the laundry. Then she vanished without a trace. The mysterious disappearance put her ex-husband Lee Heist in the spotlight, but with almost nothing to go on aside from her car parked near a bus station, he was eventually cleared. After years of unanswered questions and hopeless searching, she was declared dead in 2010. But the story only got stranger in May 2013 when Brenda suddenly reappeared out of nowhere. She had turned herself in to Key Largo officials nearly 2,000 kilometers from her family home. According to her, an impending divorce and financial problems at the time made her break down. While crying on a bench in a neighborhood park, she was approached by 3 homeless people who offered to hitchhike with her down to Florida. Without a second thought, Brenda accepted and left her life behind. It's thought her breakdown triggered a serious attachment disorder, as most people would not be able to go through with such a rash decision. Nevertheless, Brenda claimed to have spent the following 11 years homeless. But she lied about her past and worked as a cleaner, stealing her client's driver's license and identities before the law finally caught up with her. Her daughter Morgan found it hard to forgive her estranged mother, writing on Twitter that she felt like she was in a nightmare. I can't imagine that was a happy family reunion. Sherry Papini. On November 2nd, 2016, Sherry Papini, stay-at-home mother of 2, dropped her children off at daycare and went for a jog around the woods near her home in Redding, California. On November 24th, she was caught on CCTV running for her life along Country Road 17 at 5 a.m., almost 200 kilometers from her home. Papini had been savagely kidnapped. After 22 days, they had kicked her out of a car where she was found.
If I had to guess, probably somebody who knew her routine and have been watching her run or jog around the little wooded area where she lived or wherever she was jogging at, fam. That's why I be saying, y'all be careful. I'm all about exercising and all of that, but people be watching you and plotting on you.
Been savagely kidnapped. After 22 days, they had kicked her out of a car where she was found badly beaten, starved, restrained, and even branded. But what should have been a relieving recovery was only filled with holes and questions. Papini described her captors as 2 women, but the DNA found on her clothes matched that of an unknown man and woman. Papini also insisted that she got into a scuffle with her captors, which resulted in a badly cut foot, and yet no injury was found on either of her feet. She couldn't describe the place she was held, the car, or the faces of her captors. In the years following the incident, many strange tips and leads have cast doubt on her story. When it was discovered Sherry was in contact with a man in Michigan who she was planning to meet up with around the time of her disappearance, something she had failed to disclose. Law enforcement expert Ken Ryan believed the whole story may have been a hoax, stating, "In my 25 years, I've never seen a case like this where someone was kidnapped, held captive for 20-something days, then just released. None of it makes sense. 3 years on and it's still unclear what really happened, but the investigation into this strange abduction remains open." Which of these cases do you think is
I don't believe her either. I don't believe her. Like somebody keep you for 20 days, you're going to be able to fully detail almost, you're going to look at the sketch artist yourself and be like, nah, you ain't drawing that right. Give me the paper. Give me the paper. I'll draw it myself. You know what I'm saying? You're going to be able to give them everything down to the smallest detail. What you mean? And I'm going to know if my foot cut. I ain't had nothing but time for the past 20 days to look at myself. So other than a head injury that made her kind of loopy, other than that, then there's no reason she shouldn't have been able to provide that information. I'd be looking at her very sketchy and skeptical myself. You know what I mean? But you got to be careful out here in these streets, or depending on where you're from, these streets. You got to be careful out in them streets. You know what I mean? But this was people who disappeared and reappeared in strange and mysterious ways. Y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what you think. And stick around and stay tuned, man. Till the next one, I'm gone. Peace.